The fetal monitor screamed a rhythm no mother should hear. Elena Duarte gripped the rail. Cedar Falls Memorial blurred into white noise. 28 hours of labor, one sentence from the team. "We need the surgeon." Her water broke at Riverside Market, tomatoes skittering across the floor. But now only one number mattered. Her son's heartbeat falling below 70. The OB scrubbed at the steel sink, back turned. Same green scrubs, same night shift shoulders. He raised the mask. Dr. Nathan Morales. The man who pressed $300 into her palm 2 Septembers ago and said, "Take care of the problem." Tonight, he's the only one who can save them. Des Moines had been home for 29 years before Elena left it behind. She'd rebuilt herself in Cedar Falls. Quiet streets, a job at the county clerk's office filing property transfers, a studio apartment where no one asked about the past, the farmer's market on Saturdays, the library on Tuesdays, a routine that felt like healing until her body started changing in ways she couldn't file away. The delivery room ceiling was white tile, the kind that absorbed sound and gave nothing back. Nurses moved with practiced efficiency. Ruth Bennett, the nursing chief with silver hair pulled tight, checked Elena's vitals and made notes on a clipboard in block letters anyone could read. The monitor's beep filled the silence where introductions should have been. Nathan didn't look at her. He addressed Ruth. "Fetal distress category 3. I'll need the neonatal team on standby and Dr. Chen from University Hospital if we have complications." His voice was steady, clinical, emptied of recognition. Elena's hands found the edge of the sheet and held on. Ruth positioned the ultrasound wand, gel cold against Elena's skin. The screen showed what numbers already confirmed: cord compression, the baby's oxygen dropping with every contraction. Nathan leaned closer to read the measurements, and for half a second, his eyes met Elena's. She saw it. The flicker of memory, the slight pause in his breath. Then he turned to Ruth and said, "Prep for emergency C-section. I'll need—" "You knew her," Ruth interrupted, pen hovering over her notes. It wasn't a question. Nathan's jaw tightened. 2 years ago. Different city. I'll recuse myself if—" "There's no one else," Ruth said, voice flat. "Dr. Patterson's in surgery until 3 in the morning, and the University Hospital backup is 40 minutes out." She looked at Elena, then back at Nathan. "Can you do this?" Elena wanted to scream. She wanted to demand anyone else, any other hands. But the monitor kept beeping its terrible countdown, and her son's life wasn't about her pride. "Do it," she whispered. Nathan nodded once. "I'll document every step. Ruth, you're primary witness. Dr. Avery Collins is medical director tonight. Get his authorization on record before we start." Ruth called Dr. Collins at 11:47. Elena heard the time announced over the intercom, digits spelled out like a courtroom transcript. Collins's voice crackled through the speaker. "Authorized. Dr. Amir Chen from University Hospital is en route as backup. Proceed with full documentation." Nathan laid out the terms while scrubbing his hands raw. "Ruth documents every action, no private conversations. After delivery, I transfer all post-op care to Dr. Martinez." He glanced at Elena through the observation window. "If at any point you want me out, say Cedar Falls and I stop. No questions." The safe word settled between them like a contract neither wanted to sign. Ruth wrote it down. Elena saw her spell it in capital letters across the top of the procedure log. Patient safe word Cedar Falls. The clipboard became a shield, a witness, a promise that this night would have a record anyone could read. Elena's fingers found the small silver compass her grandmother had given her when she turned 16. It hung on a chain around her neck, warm against her skin. "True north," Abuela used to say. "When you're lost, find true north." She'd worn it the day Nathan told her to take care of the problem. She wore it now. The incision was clean. Nathan's hands moved with precision that Elena recognized from a different context, a different life. He'd been a resident then, working 30-hour shifts and falling asleep mid-sentence. Now he commanded the room with quiet authority, calling for suction and counting instruments while Ruth tracked every movement on her log. The hospital administrator appeared at the observation window. Margaret Yates, 60-something and sharp-eyed, holding a tablet and frowning. She rapped on the glass and Ruth stepped out to meet her. Elena couldn't hear the conversation, but she watched Ruth show the documentation, the authorization from Dr. Collins, the backup call to Dr. Chen, the safe word protocol. Margaret's frown didn't soften, but she nodded and made a note on her tablet before disappearing down the corridor. Nathan didn't look up from his work. "Almost there," he said. And Elena didn't know if he meant the baby or something else entirely. At 11:59, Leo Alexander Duarte entered the world screaming. Nathan lifted him with steady hands, passed him to the neonatal team, and stepped back from the table. "Dr. Martinez takes over from here," he announced to the room. Recovery was a beige room with a window that faced the parking lot. Elena held Leo against her chest, his tiny fingers wrapped around her thumb, and tried not to think about the man who'd saved him. Ruth stopped by at 2 a.m. with discharge papers and a copy of the procedure log. 8 pages, every action documented in plain handwriting. "For your records," Ruth said. Dr. Chen arrived at 12:15. He reviewed everything Nathan did and confirmed protocol. No complications. She paused. "Margaret wants you to know there's a formal complaint process if you need it." Elena traced the timestamp at the top of the first page. November 15th, 11:47 p.m. "I don't need it. Keep it anyway." Ruth's voice was gentle. "People talk. Better to have the truth in writing." Nathan appeared in the doorway 2 days later, when Elena was packing to leave. He carried a folder, patient transfer paperwork, Leo's first checkup scheduled with Dr. Martinez for next week. He set it on the bedside table without stepping fully into the room. "I won't be there," he said. "Dr. Martinez is excellent. If there are any concerns—" "Why did you come to Cedar Falls?" The question came out sharper than Elena intended. Nathan's hand went to his collar, fingers touching the edge of his ID badge, a habit she remembered from arguments they used to have. "The hospital needed an OB. I needed to leave Des Moines." He met her eyes. "I didn't know you were here." Elena touched the compass at her throat. "Cedar Falls," she said quietly. He left without another word. 3 weeks later, Elena returned to her desk at the county clerk's office. The stacks of property deeds and marriage certificates felt comfortingly mundane after hospitals and monitors and the weight of her son asleep in her arms. Her co-worker, Sandra Ochoa, brought coffee and gossip about the new OB at Memorial. "Apparently he's setting up some program for at-risk mothers," Sandra said. "Free checkups, home visits, the whole thing." Margaret Yates is thrilled. Keeps talking about community impact and donor interest. Elena filed a quitclaim deed and said nothing. The program announcement appeared in the Cedar Falls Gazette on December 1st. Hope Initiative seeks director. Elena read it over lunch in her car, Leo sleeping in his car seat behind her. The job description was straightforward. Coordinate services for pregnant women without insurance, liaise with local clinics, manage a small budget. The salary was modest but fair. At the bottom, in smaller print, "For questions, contact Dr. Nathan Morales, Memorial Hospital." Elena touched her compass and considered the contradiction. The man who'd told her to get rid of a pregnancy now wanted to help women keep theirs. She crumpled the newspaper and threw it in the back seat. That night, an envelope arrived at her apartment. No return address, just her name and familiar handwriting. Inside, a photocopy of Nathan's medical license transfer from Des Moines to Cedar Falls dated August 23rd, and a handwritten note on hospital stationery. "I can't undo what I said. I can try to do better. The Hope Initiative is real. It needs someone who understands what women actually face. You don't owe me anything, but the work might matter." The date on the license transfer was 3 weeks before Elena's water broke in the market. He'd been here all along in the same small city and never reached out until circumstance forced his hand. Elena considered the note for 3 days. On the 4th, she drove to Memorial Hospital with Leo strapped in his carrier, printed resume folded in her purse. The Hope office was a converted storage room on the 2nd floor. 2 desks, filing cabinets that didn't match, a window overlooking the staff parking lot. Nathan was assembling a bookshelf when she arrived. He wore jeans and a faded university sweatshirt, sleeves pushed to his elbows, and looked up with surprise that seemed genuine. "I'm here about the director position," Elena said before he could speak. He set down the Allen wrench. "You're qualified, more than qualified." A pause. "But I need to know if you can work with me without—" He gestured vaguely between them. "Without this becoming complicated." Elena set Leo's carrier on the empty desk. "I can work with anyone if the work matters." She pulled out her resume. 8 years at the county clerk's office, I process legal documents, property transfers, marriage licenses, court orders. I know how to keep records that hold up under scrutiny. I know which forms matter and which government offices actually respond. She met his eyes. "And I know what it's like to be 23, pregnant, and told by the person you trusted that you're a problem to solve." Nathan's face went pale. He sat down slowly in the desk chair, hands gripping the armrests. "I rehearsed an apology 1,000 times. None of them were good enough." "I don't need an apology." Elena's voice was steady. "I need to know why you're doing this." He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a photograph. Edges worn, colors faded. A teenage girl with Nathan's eyes and a baby in her arms. "My sister, Carolina. She got pregnant at 17. Our father gave her $500 and told her to fix it. She tried." He set the photo on the desk between them. "Pills she bought online. She almost died. The baby, my nephew, didn't make it." Elena looked at the photo. The girl's smile was uncertain, protective, the kind of smile Elena had worn in bathroom mirrors, practicing hope. "I became a doctor to help people," Nathan continued. "But when you told me you were pregnant, all I heard was my father's voice. All I saw was the shame he made Carolina carry." He touched the edge of the photograph. "I gave you money and walked away because I was a coward. Carolina died 3 years ago. Car accident, nothing to do with any of this. But I never told her I understood. I never did better." The compass at Elena's throat felt heavier. She picked up the photograph, studied the date stamp in the corner. July 4th, 2009. 16 years ago. Nathan would have been 14. "The Hope Initiative won't fix what I did," he said quietly. "But maybe it keeps someone else's sister alive. Maybe it gives women the choice Carolina never really had." Elena took the job on January 10th. The budget was $75,000, donated by Margaret Yates's husband, a retired insurance executive who'd lost his daughter to postpartum complications. The money paid for Elena's salary, a part-time nurse navigator, transportation vouchers, and a partnership with 3 local clinics. Nathan kept his distance. He attended the monthly board meetings, signed the necessary approvals, and deferred every program decision to Elena. When they passed each other in hospital corridors, he nodded politely and kept walking. In February, Elena created a simple intake system, a single-page form, no medical jargon, questions in plain language. Do you have a place to stay? Do you have food? Do you need help getting to appointments? She kept copies at the clerk's office, the public library, the Riverside Market where her water had broken. The first client was a 19-year-old named Keisha Harris, 7 months pregnant and sleeping in her car. Elena helped her apply for emergency housing, scheduled checkups at the community clinic, and connected her with a caseworker at the state's Family Services Office. When Keisha asked why Hope didn't require proof of income or citizenship, Elena showed her the mission statement she'd written. Everyone deserves a safe birth. No paperwork proves that. On March 3rd, Nathan stopped by the Hope office with lunch, 2 sandwiches from the deli across the street, napkins, bottled water. He set the bag on Elena's desk without sitting down. "I know we're keeping things professional," he said, "but I wanted you to know the board is impressed. Margaret says you've already helped 12 women in 2 months. Elena unwrapped a sandwich. 14, actually. 2 more came in yesterday. Nathan smiled, a real smile, tentative and unguarded. Carolina would have liked you. He left before Elena could respond, but the sandwich remained still warm. She found a receipt tucked inside the bag, dated that day, stamped 11:32 a.m. from Annie's Deli, Handwritten note at the bottom. Turkey on rye, no mayo, extra pickles. Her exact order. The one she'd mentioned once in passing 2 years ago during a different life. She kept the receipt in her desk drawer, next to Carolina's photograph Nathan had left behind during their first meeting. The timestamp and the memory, documented together. April brought trouble in the form of a printed article. Someone had leaked Elena's employment records to the Cedar Falls Gazette. Not falsified, but framed with implications. The headline ran on page 3. Hospital OB hires ex-partner to run donor-funded program. The article was factually accurate and deeply misleading. It mentioned Nathan's role as Hope's medical advisor, Elena's salary, the Yates family donation. It quoted an unnamed source. Seems convenient that Dr. Morales' personal history overlaps with program leadership. Are taxpayer-supported hospital resources funding a private arrangement? Elena read it at her desk while Sandra stood in the doorway, arms crossed. Tell me there's a reasonable explanation. We're not together, Elena said. We haven't been for 2 years. Then why does it look like he gave you a $75,000 a year job? Because I'm good at it. Elena's voice was sharp. Check the intake numbers. Check the client feedback. Check the accounting. Every dollar is documented. Sandra's expression softened slightly. I believe you. But Margaret Yates is calling a meeting for tomorrow morning at 10. Media relations policy. They're worried about donor confidence. That night, Elena received a text from an unknown number. I'm sorry. I should have disclosed our history to the board in writing. This is my fault. And she typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on. Did you hire me because I'm qualified or because you felt guilty? The reply came immediately. Both. Does that disqualify the work we're doing? Elena stared at the screen. Leo fussed in his crib and she picked him up, held him against her shoulder. Her compass swung free, catching light from the street lamp outside. She almost typed the safe word, almost ended it cleanly, walked away before the damage spread further. Instead, she wrote, The meeting is at 10. Bring documentation. The conference room smelled like burned coffee and fluorescent anxiety. Margaret Yates sat at the head of the table, tablet in front of her, expression unreadable. Nathan arrived with the accordion folder, the kind lawyers used for depositions, and set it beside Elena's chair without sitting next to her. Margaret opened with the obvious. The Gazette article raises questions about process and propriety. Dr. Morales, you didn't disclose your prior relationship with Ms. Duarte when she applied for the director position. I should have, Nathan said. It was an oversight born from trying to keep personal and professional boundaries separate. I'll submit a written disclosure today. Retroactive. And the hiring decision? Margaret's voice was neutral, scalpel sharp. Was Ms. Duarte the most qualified candidate, or was this a personal favor? Elena opened her own folder, the one she'd prepared at 2 a.m, hands shaking with anger and cold clarity. I was the only candidate who applied. The job posting ran for 6 weeks in the Gazette, on the hospital website, and through the state's Workforce Development Board. 0 other applicants. She slid a printed screenshot across the table, the job listing, archived, with application deadline and submission count clearly visible. Margaret studied it. Why do you think that is? Because the pay is modest for the responsibility. The office is a converted storage room, and most people with nonprofit experience don't want to work under a doctor they've never heard of in a program with no track record. Elena's voice was steady. I applied because I understand the work from the inside. I've been the woman who couldn't afford prenatal care. I've been the person standing in a government office wondering which form might save me. Sandra spoke up from the back of the room. I've known Elena for 3 years. She's meticulous, honest, and doesn't cut corners. If she says the work is clean, I believe her. Nathan pulled a document from his folder. This is the Hope Initiative's complete financial record. Every donation, every expenditure, every voucher issued. The Yates donation sits in a separate account, audited monthly by the hospital's finance office. Elena's salary is paid from that account, approved by the board in December before she was hired. He set down another sheet. This is the client outcome report. 14 women served, 12 successful deliveries, 2 ongoing pregnancies, 0 maternal complications, 100% client satisfaction on anonymous surveys. Margaret read in silence. The room waited. Finally, she closed her tablet. The work is solid. The optics are terrible. She looked at Elena, then Nathan. I'm not shutting down Hope, but I'm implementing a media policy. No press statements without my approval, no interviews without HR present, and quarterly reviews with the full board. If the Gazette smells blood, they'll keep digging. Make sure there's nothing to find. Elena walked to her car alone, Leon asleep in her arms, and sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine. The compass swung against her chest, and she asked herself the question that mattered. Was any of this real, or am I just another way for Nathan to feel less guilty? Ruth Bennett found Elena in the hospital cafeteria 3 days later. She carried a manila envelope, the kind the nursing office used for shift records, and sat down without asking permission. You probably don't remember me clearly, Ruth said, but I was the nursing chief in the delivery room the night Leo was born. Elena remembered. The silver hair, the clipboard, the steady hands that had documented everything when the world was falling apart. Ruth opened the envelope. Margaret Yates asked me to pull the records from that night. Not for the meeting. She wanted to verify the timeline herself, make sure there were no irregularities. She spread 3 documents across the table. The first was the procedure log Ruth had kept. 8 pages, handwritten in block print, time-stamped at the top. November 15th, 11:47 p.m. to November 16th, 1:13 a.m. Every action Nathan had taken was listed in plain language. Incision made at 12:02 a.m. Suction requested 12:04 a.m. Infant delivered 12:11 a.m. Patient vitals stable. Transferred to recovery 12:45 a.m. The second document was Dr. Avery Collins's authorization, printed from the hospital's electronic system. Emergency C-section approved. Dr. Nathan Morales, primary surgeon. Dr. Amir Chen, backup en route. Nursing Chief Ruth Bennett, primary witness. Authorization logged November 15th, 11:51 p.m. The third was a photograph Ruth had taken herself. Not standard protocol, but something she did for complicated cases. It showed the observation window of operating room 2, the wall clock clearly visible. 12:16 a.m. In the foreground, Dr. Chen stood beside Nathan, watching the final sutures. Elena's compass was visible in the corner of the image, resting on the surgical tray where the nurses had placed it for safekeeping. She'd asked them to keep it close. Needed true north, even unconscious. I've been a nurse for 32 years, Ruth said quietly. I've seen doctors play favorites, cut corners, let personal feelings compromise care. That's not what happened in your delivery room. She tapped the photograph. Nathan followed every protocol. He called for backup before he made the first cut. He documented his conflict of interest verbally and let me witness every move. When Dr. Chen arrived, Nathan stepped back and let him verify the work. That's not a man hiding something. That's a man trying to do right under impossible circumstances. Elena touched the photograph, traced the outline of her compass. Why are you showing me this? Because Margaret asked me if I thought there was any impropriety in how Nathan handled your delivery or your hiring, and I told her no. But I thought you should see the proof yourself. Ruth slid a small notebook across the table, her personal log, the one she kept separate from official records. The page for November 15th had a single line at the bottom, written in blue ink. Dr. Morales recused himself from post-op care. Transferred patient to Dr. Martinez effective 12:45 a.m. No exceptions requested. The timestamp matched. The handwriting matched. The story held together in 3 separate documents, created by 3 different people with no coordination possible. Elena looked up. Who took this to Margaret? Nathan did. 2 days ago, he gave her everything. The delivery records, the hiring timeline, the Hope financial reports, and a written statement accepting full responsibility for not disclosing your history up front. Ruth's voice was gentle. He didn't ask her to clear his name. He asked her to protect yours. The Cedar Falls Gazette printed a correction on April 23, page 2. Hope Initiative Finances. Clear audit. No impropriety found in hiring process. The article quoted Margaret Yates directly. A comprehensive review of all documentation, including surgical records, board minutes, financial audits, and employment procedures, confirms that the HOPE initiative operates with full transparency and accountability. Ms. Duarte was hired through a standard process and has exceeded performance expectations. The unnamed source who'd leaked the original story was identified 3 days later. Vincent Talmadge, a hospital board member who'd opposed the HOPE initiative from the beginning. He'd wanted the Yates donation redirected to surgical equipment and had pushed for the program to require citizenship documentation, a policy Elena had refused to implement. Margaret called a special board meeting for April 27th, 6 in the evening, open to hospital staff and the public. Vincent sat at the far end of the table, arms crossed, wearing the same silver cufflinks he wore to every meeting, his signature, the way some men collected watches. Margaret began with facts. Mr. Talmadge submitted a formal complaint on April 9th, alleging financial mismanagement and hiring impropriety in the HOPE initiative. I commissioned an independent review. She nodded to a woman in the back. Patricia Ruiz, a certified public accountant from Des Moines with no hospital affiliations. Patricia stood and distributed a bound report. I reviewed 14 months of HOPE financial records, interviewed 12 clients, cross-referenced all expenditures with supporting documentation, and examined the hiring process for the director position. My findings: 0 discrepancies in accounting, 0 evidence of personal benefit, and a hiring process that, while limited by low applicant interest, followed hospital HR policy. She paused. I also reviewed the anonymous client surveys. Satisfaction rate, 100%. Several clients specifically credited Ms. Duarte with life-saving interventions, securing emergency housing, connecting them with social services, providing transportation when they had none. Vincent's jaw tightened. The appearance of impropriety is not the same as actual impropriety, Margaret interrupted. You leaked a misleading story to the press, Mr. Talmadge. The Gazette confirmed you as their source this morning. She slid a printed email across the table. The journalist confirmation, timestamp visible, Vincent's name spelled out. Vincent's face went red. I acted in the hospital's best interest. You acted to undermine a program you disagreed with. Margaret's voice could have cut glass. The state attorney's office has been notified. They'll determine if your actions constitute interference with a charitable program or misuse of board access to confidential employment records. In the meantime, I'm recommending your immediate removal from this board, effective tonight. The vote was unanimous, 8-0, with Vincent abstaining. Elena sat in the back row, Leo asleep in her arms, and watched Vincent gather his briefings and leave. His silver cufflinks caught the light one last time as he pushed through the conference room door. Nathan approached after the room cleared. He didn't sit, just stood at a respectful distance. I'm sorry you had to go through that. Elena adjusted Leo's blanket. You gave Margaret everything, the delivery records, the photograph, Ruth's notes. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Nathan's voice was quiet. You built something real. I wasn't going to let someone tear it down because I was too scared to be honest about the past. He paused. Ruth told me she showed you the compass in the photo. I didn't know the nurses had kept it on the tray. True north, Elena said softly. My grandmother's advice. She sounds wise. Nathan smiled slightly. For what it's worth, you've been my true north for the last 4 months. Watching you work, seeing you fight for those women, it reminds me why I became a doctor in the first place. He left before Elena could answer, but this time it felt less like running and more like respecting the space she needed. Summer came gently to Cedar Falls. The HOPE initiative expanded to a second office, hired 2 more staff members, and served 43 women by August. Elena trained a volunteer coordinator, streamlined the intake process, and wrote a grant proposal that won $15,000 from a statewide maternal health foundation. Nathan remained on the board but stepped back from daily operations. He showed up for Leo's checkups, not as the doctor but in the waiting room, asking Elena if she needed anything, offering to hold the diaper bag, leaving before he overstayed his welcome. On September 2nd, 2 years to the day after he'd told her to take care of the problem. Elena found a package on her apartment doorstep. Inside, a donation receipt made out to the Hope Initiative in Carolina's name, $2,000, and a handwritten note. "I can't undo the past. I can try to build a different future. Thank you for showing me how. Nathan." Beneath the note was a second item, a small silver frame holding the photograph from the operating room, the clock, the compass, the moment everything changed. Elena hung it in the Hope office beside the mission statement and the client thank you cards that papered one wall. True north, visible to everyone who walked through the door. In October, Nathan asked if she'd consider co-presenting at a regional healthcare conference, building community trust in maternal health programs. She said yes, but only if they wrote the presentation together, only if every claim had documentation, only if they addressed the mistakes openly. They stood on that conference stage in matching business attire, no romance, no hidden agenda, and told the truth. A doctor had failed a woman when she was most vulnerable. That same doctor had later saved her life and her son's life under the worst possible circumstances. Together, reluctantly, they'd built a program that served people neither of them could help alone. The audience asked hard questions. Elena answered with intake forms, budget spreadsheets, client testimonials. Nathan answered with surgical protocols, recusal procedures, and Ruth's photograph. They left the stage separately but met in the parking lot afterward, where Nathan handed Elena a coffee, turkey sandwich deli receipt tucked in the cup sleeve, timestamp from that morning, her order memorized and honored. "I don't know if we'll ever be more than colleagues," Nathan said, "but I'm grateful to be that much." Elena sipped the coffee. "Colleagues is a start. Trust takes longer." "I'll wait as long as it takes." Leo reached for Nathan from his stroller, tiny hands grasping. Nathan looked at Elena, a question without words. She nodded once. He lifted Leo carefully, held him like the gift he was, and Elena saw something she'd never expected. A man learning to be better, not through words, but through the slow, documented work of showing up. The Hope Initiative still runs in Cedar Falls. It's helped over 200 women. The records are open to anyone who asks. The work isn't romantic. It's receipts and intake forms, transportation vouchers and night shifts, boundaries honored and trust rebuilt one choice at a time. Some second chances come through emergency room doors. Some come through the courage to examine the evidence, follow the truth, and rebuild from a foundation of accountability instead of apology. What would you do if the person who hurt you most became the only one who could save what mattered? If this gave you courage, subscribe and tell us, what would you have done?